Day 14th, we are on our journey for our Comptia Security Plus. Guys, this is a special video for those of you who've actually studied access control or you're studying access control. You know the acronym, you know what DAC, oh, discretionary access control, okay. ABAC, oh, attribute-based access control. Okay, that this video is for you because I was having a really hard time trying to go ahead and if they were to ask me a couple days ago, hey, what's the difference between MAC and RBAC? I would have not been able to give a genuine description, at least not a good one, or more importantly, an accurate one. So this video is for you if you're having a hard time studying access controls. If this is the first time that you're studying access controls, this is going to be a perfect video for you because I already went through the hardship trying to learn and try to figure out, hey, what's the difference again? Why, like, this all looks the same to me? Isn't it supposed to do the same job? Like, what's going on? Okay, so with that being said, let's get into it. And I have this amazing article here. This is an article from the University of Hawaii. This article, whoever wrote it, you guys are really good. I really appreciate it because this article was what really helped me understand the information. I'll make sure to put the article in the description below. But mind you guys, we're not here just to read and regurgitate things. We're here to read, comprehend, understand, read, write, critically think, process the information, and above all else, put things in your own words. Okay, that's when you know that you really own the information, even if it's something as elementary as something small. But I think putting things in your own words without sounding so eloquent is better than copying something that sounds really eloquent, but you have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, access control. Okay. There's basically four main ones. This article only touches upon the three main ones, but we'll touch upon all four. What I really want to highlight, though, is MAC, mandatory access control, and RBAC, role-based access control. Okay, so first and foremost, what is an access control? Okay, what is an access control? Okay, and they basically have this paragraph here. And I'm going to sum up this whole entire paragraph into my own words, which is who gets what data? Who gets what data? That's literally the sole purpose of the access control. It is a control that gives access to certain individuals within an organization to certain information. Who gets what data? Okay. Who gets what data? That is basically what an access control is. Okay. And the more eloquent saying here is access control is used to identify a subject, user slash human, and to authorize the subject to access an object slash data resource based on the required task. Okay. So this, and better yet, all of this, who gets what data? That is what an access control basically is. Okay. And it's literally in a name, access control. Control to access. Access of what? Information. Okay. So the next thing is let's go to the model. So remember, there's four main models. The first one here is a discretionary access control, or DAC, DAC. Okay. And once again, we're not going to read all of this. We're going to put things in our own words. And it's basically when I think about DAC, guys, I think about whoever created the file decides who gets to access the file. As simple as that. Whoever created the file decides who gets access to the file. And the best example I can give on my own would basically be Google Sheets. If you have ever worked on a project, you can go ahead and create Google Sheets, and you can create the file and say, hey, everybody can have read, write, and read, write permissions. So you can go ahead and modify the file if you want. Or, hey, you know what? I created this Excel sheet, but I'm only gonna be the only one that can go ahead and basically update the Excel sheet. You guys can only have access to it by reading it. You guys don't have any write permissions, so on and so forth. So that is basically what a DAC is. Okay, this is something that I think we do inherently, so much so that we don't even think that we're doing it, or we're not creating an Excel sheet saying, hey, look at this, I'm going to implement my discretionary access control right now. I think that we do our work so much that we don't even realize that, hey, this would technically be this terminology in the cybersecurity realm. Okay, and the implementation that they have here is this popular model is utilized by some of the most popular operating systems like Microsoft Windows File. So if you were to go to any file right now, you do the right click and you go ahead and click on settings, and you go to so on and so forth. You can see here that you can have the security, and you can decide, hey, access, no access. You can modify, you can only read, hey, you can write. So that is discretionary access control. Let's go on to the next one. The next one is role based access control. Guys, you guys need to know this. Okay, so make sure, wake up, so to speak. Role based access control is definitely something that they might ask you. Okay, and it's something that you have to basically be really familiar with. And it's literally in the name, guys. Role. What's another word for role? Category. What's another word for category? Group. Okay, and you can play the synonym game all day long, but just think about it from that perspective. Role based access control. And this here is non discretionary. So this here is implemented by the system admin. Okay, so the system administrator is the one who can go ahead and basically decide, hey, you have access to this information, you have access to this information. What decides what access of information you have? That's going to be based on your role. Okay, and there's a thing here. It's funny that they put this here. I'm just going to read it really quick. So we're on the topic of RBAC. It presents an opportunity for organization to address the principle of least privilege. Guys, yes, that's true. But we should be implementing least privilege every chance we get, everything we do. Okay. And it is a major principle, and I'll show you why. And I really like this picture here. This was really good. I'm really happy that they used this because look, you have basically three things going on here. You have your people on the left, so people actually working for the organization. You have the roles, those people, the jobs, okay, that those people are doing on the middle. And then on the right, you actually have application tools that your company utilizes, or that they have access to, or that they paid for, or what have you. So you have people, you have roles, and you have your tools. In a role based access control model, you assign your applications, aka your tools, to the group, aka the role. Then you assign the role to your people. Or you assign your people to the role, you assign the role to the tools. And this is a perfect example here. Okay, I'm going to give you guys an example if that it makes sense. Customer database. Okay, why would the IT role need access to the customer database? Okay, that's something that the sales would necessarily need. Okay, or even a better one would be engineering. Okay, say there's an engineering role here. Why would the engineer need to have a customer's phone number, mailing address, email address, in order for them to go ahead and complete their job as an engineer? It's like, no, you don't need that information. You are an engineer. You just need access to your engineer laptop that has your software in order for you to engineer what you engineer. Okay, you don't need customer database in order for you to do your job. Okay, that would be an example of role-based access control. Okay, that would be a perfect example of role-based access control. So remember, you have your people, you have your roles, and then you have your tools, your applications that you use, and you assign those accordingly. Now, Let's go on to the next one. Mandatory access control, MAC. Okay. Remember, you have Mac, Mac, and Mac. You have Mac the computer, you have Mac the address, and then you have Mac mandatory access control. And don't forget, you also have the Big Mac from McDonald's. Okay. So mandatory access control, MAC. Okay. And I'm going to ask you this question right now, even before we get into it. What is the difference between mandatory access control and role-based access control? What is the difference between mandatory access control and role-based access control? And if you said, hey, mandatory access control is considered the strictest of all levels of access control systems, I would say, congratulations, you know how to read, you can regurgitate. And then I would follow up and say, why? Why is mandatory access control seen as a higher level of security or stricter with regards to access control systems? Why? You guys need to understand this, because this is what's going to make you shine. This is what's going to make a difference in learning this information. Okay, it's very easy to read the words and go ahead and memorize the acronyms, but why? Okay, and the key word here, guys, the key word here is classification. Classification. And I'm going to give you guys another example. Let's go back to sales role. Okay, so we're going to explain why mandatory access control is seen as a higher level of security compared to role-based access control. As you guys can see here on the sales role, if I'm reading this correctly, Laura is part of the sales. Jane is part of the sales. So you have Jane and Laura, who literally have the same role category. Okay, same job position. Jane sells, Laura sells. Okay, the difference is classification. So Mac has that opportunity to use categories, but let's assume Jane has been working for the company for 10 years. And today is Laura's first day on the job. Okay, so Jane has been working for the company for 10 years. Laura has been working for the company for literally one day. It's their first day on the job. They're assigned this role of sales. They're assigned this role of sales. If you had a mandatory access control and you said, hey, these customers have been loyal customers, they've been with us for 10 plus years, they've go ahead and they basically pay the bills, let's make sure we take care of them. Let's give these customers database or their information to our higher level sales. And if Jane is a higher level than Laura, and it's Laura's first day on the job, and Laura's trying to access certain information from the customer database, even though she has the same role, because of her classification, high, medium, low, she could potentially not have access to that information. That's the major difference between mandatory access control and role-based access control. And that was something that honestly I was struggling with to really go ahead and comprehend, and lots of coffee and late night studying to really get this idea. That's the difference between mandatory access control and role-based access control. Mandatory access control has another level, so to speak, and that level would be the classification. So I gave you guys the example of Jane working for the company for 10 years and Laura working for the company for one day. Would you give that person the same amount of information? Would you give them the same level of access of information? That's the difference. Mandatory access control works on a hierarchy of information. Not only does it implement what would basically be the category, which we already established is another synonym for role, but it also it implements classification using what they would call security labels. Okay, so that is the major difference between mandatory access control and role-based access control. You could technically be in the same category, but one person would have a higher level of access based upon their classification. Okay, mandatory access control. This is great for the military. This is the model that they would use for the government as well. So let's see here, and I'm gonna read this here because it just paints the picture. Mac is the most secure access control, but requires a considerable amount of planning and requires a high system management due to constant updating of objects and account labels. So basically, guys, this is the name of the game of IT. Higher performance, lower reliability. Higher security, but the system is slower. Okay, and it's just literally trying to play that game of what would fit best with regards to what are our resources, what do we need, and what do we need to get done. Okay, implementation that they have for the mandatory access control was actually they talked about Windows Vista 8 used a variant of Mac with what they called mandatory integrity control. So I don't know about you, but it looks like they definitely went back to role-based access controls with Windows and everything of that nature. At least from what I see, I could be wrong. But nonetheless, they did try to implement some type of mandatory access control with the Windows Vista 8, so on and so forth. But nonetheless, let's go on to the last one here. So the last one actually is uh, attribute based access control, ABAC, attribute based access control. Now, this one here, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. This wasn't as something that I studied as much as in depth as I did Mac and role based access control. Um, Though I will say this, it's in the name. Attribute based access control. And we already know what access control is. We already talked about three models. Now they're giving us the fourth model, and it's saying attribute. So this would be based upon certain attributes, the time of day, okay, users attributes, what role do they have, the position, the job position that they have, the location in which they're trying to access this information. If they work a typical 8 to 5, why are they accessing this information at 2 in the morning? Okay, attribute based access controls. Okay, so now I'm going to do a quick little quiz, guys. If I go ahead and I say, hey, our access control stopped someone from accessing information based upon their location and based upon the time that they went ahead and tried to log in, which model was implemented? You would say attribute based access control. We just went over that. If I were to say, hey, this individual works for the accounting department. They work for the accounting department. They're trying to access information from the accounting department, but their access has been denied. What access model is being implemented? That would be a MAC, mandatory access control based model. Why? Because while the individual could technically be in the same role, group, or category, the level of information, uh, their classification, or the level of information they're trying to attain is not granted. And that would be enforced by what would be mandatory access control. Because mandatory access control, while it does still use a role based system, it takes it a step higher with having a certain type of classification that individuals need to meet in order for them to have access to the organization's resources. Okay. And let's say you just started a brand new company, you don't have a lot of money, and you want to go ahead and start allowing people to have control to certain data from the company, um, so they can read, write, and whatnot. You have three different departments. What would be the best access model to use? That would be a role based. You would create certain roles. Based upon those roles, you would determine which applications they would need access to. Then you would assign the roles to the people or the people to the roles. The last one would be your coworker just went ahead and created a new Excel sheet, but you can only read it. You don't have the opportunity to make any adjustments to it. What type of access control would that be? And that would be the very first one that we talked about, discretionary access controls. Okay, guys, so I really hope this video helped a lot of you people out there, because I know I was struggling with it. I know sometimes when you just study a lot of things seem fuzzy, and I felt like I had a breakthrough with the information of studying the access controls, and I just really wanted to share that with this video. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, or maybe is there something I missed or anything along those lines, feel free to ask. We're here in this journey together. We're learning together. We're on our journey to get our Comptia Security Plus and hopefully bigger and greater things down the road. But this is where we are right now. So we'll see you guys on the next one.